Now this begins the section on how you can configure how the RtTable and also the RtValue and the RtTime series web parts can be configured to appear, and there are many different options. Now all of these options are controlled through the RT Baseline Administration page. So let me show you where that's done. This is the section, it's called RtTable, under the section called Configuration. As you can see, there's a list of configurations. Those configurations can be associated with specific data sets or are associated with specific data sets. There are some configurations, like for example this one right here, RT Snapshot. That's a configuration that's associated with the snapshot or any kind of snapshot oriented data. If you notice, there's a reserved data set called Snapshots and Archive. And RT Snapshot and RT Archive, they ship with the system. Those are two configurations that are just the defaults. But as I said, in addition, you can create your own configurations. So let me give you an example just by showing you a kind of before and after of how you can apply, how you can define configurations and specific formatting, and then how you can apply that formatting. Now here's an example of a configuration called myconfig with format. And what I've done in this particular dialog box is I've configured some conditional formatting that you can see right here. This is conditional formatting only for the column called temperature in the data set that's listed up here. It's a data set that's listing relational database and a time series data. So the way this is working is we're basically saying if the temperature is less than 15, we will set the foreground color to blue. If the temperature is greater than or equal to 16, we'll set that color to red. So let me show you before and after this has been applied. This is an example of the RtTable web part before that configuration has been done. If you notice, if we scroll forward, no matter what the value is, it's always going to be black. Now if I go in and change the configuration, watch what happens when I apply that table configuration. First I want to point out that this is it's a configuration that it is available because it's a configuration that I have associated with that data set. Now because I associated it with that data set, when I look at the behavior settings down here, I get the choice of either no behavior, no explicit behavior, or this one that I configured to set the red and the blue text as I described before. So those are the options that I have. And again, I get those options because it was this is the data set that I associated with that table configuration. Well, watch what happens when I go ahead and make this change. Before I do that, let me just move this up just a bit so we can scroll over and see some more of this configuration. See, right now with no behavior settings, all I'm looking at is the timestamp and the temperature, and that's why that's really all you saw in there with no formatting to speak of. If I switch over and choose these behavior settings, well, it controls what columns appear. It's the same set of columns. But more importantly, in this case, it controls the format. So when I go ahead and acknowledge and say OK, what you should notice is that the formatting that we've defined, there we go, that formatting that we've defined is in place. So as you can see, we go above 16, it turns red. Between 15 and 16, it's black, and below 15, it turns blue. Actually, there's one unintended consequence here. When I reimposed that formatting, if you notice, the sequence from that formatting was picked up, the sequence of the tables, or excuse me, of the columns. So I'd better reverse that if I want this to look like it looked previous. Or that's something that I can change in the definition of that format. Yeah, there we go. So now now we've got it back looking with the timestamp on the left and the formatting in place. Now that's one example. We're going to look at two more examples, but I just want to warn you, if you're looking at this and saying, well, this is awfully complicated, I agree. It's a tremendously powerful set of formatting tools. Now, whenever you hear the word powerful associated with computers, that just means it's usually very, very complex and somewhat difficult. In many cases, it can be. This reminds me a lot, all the configuration options you have here, it reminds me a lot of when we saw, customers sometimes ask us if we can tell them a little bit about the Visual Basic for application scripting in Process Book, for example. That is an enormous topic. There's so much functionality available there, you just don't even know where to start. Well, if you take a look at the documentation from the RT Baseline Services Administration Guide on this particular topic, if you go in, you'll notice that there are a tremendous number of formatting options available within this configuration section. So we'll explore some of them, but to be honest, I mean most of these are fairly well documented, and we're not going to embark on a demonstration of every single one in this series of videos. However, since it is something that's fairly easy to demonstrate with trial and error, and the permutations run into the thousands, I hope you'll understand why we don't demonstrate them all. Now here's a second example of the configuration that can be done with this RtTable configuration. First, let me go ahead and minimize this. I've got a bunch of different web parts that I've already configured here. We'll just kind of look before and after. I'll just click and restore on this. See, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just the RtTable, but it's also the RtValues and the RtTime series that can be affected by this. So let me show you an example of another before and after example. This time we'll show you the whole before and after, and then we'll go take a look at the table configuration. Now this right here, if we look at the definition, this is an RtValues web part, and it simply shows these four tags showing two things that I selected, time and value. And I did not choose any of the available behavior settings for this. Now take a look at the behavior settings available. When I click here, I can see this would be all of the RtTable configurations that are configured to go with this particular data set. Actually, this data set is that reserved one I called snapshots. So you'll notice that among the ones that I can define myself, there's also one called the RtSnapshot table. That actually ships with the system, so when I click on that, what you'll notice is it reconfigures this to show something that hopefully you've seen before. This is the default behavior you get when you simply create an RtValues web part. You'll get a web part that ends up looking like this. If I go ahead and say OK, and here's our end result. It shows me the name of the tag, the time, the value, and then this bar graph showing me the current state. Now that current state, that's actually something that you'll notice that's one of the options that you have for configuring the or for making a change to the way a value will typically appear in any of these web parts. So that's something you'll see over and over again, this current state option. So that's an optional way of showing values. Instead of just showing that, it shows you the single value. We show this bar graph extending up and down from the typical value. So that I just did, the before and after, was an example of making use of this right here. It's called the RtSnapshot table configuration. It's a table configuration that, as I said, ships with the system. So we of course recommend that you don't make any modifications to this. And all these different options, which we'll describe more later, are where we've chosen what we think are the best set of options to appear by default. But as I said, if you would like to change that, well, you can go into your own, you can create your own configuration, like this one right here. This is called My Config with Current. It's actually an example of a different set of formatting that I can apply. So for example, in here, some of these different things here appear with different colors, different formatting, etc. And if we were to go in here and make a change to this, it would pick up the configurations that are stored there. So let's take a look at this. Now if I were to change this using that configuration, my config with current, take a look at how all the the selected columns, etc., are all different. So again, just an example of how these things can be stored centrally, and then anybody within the organization can make use of these configurations. Also notice the beauty of storing these in central locations. When you make this configuration, since it is associated with this default data set called snapshots, everybody in the organization has the ability to look at snapshots the way you've defined.